Hey everyone, out here at the farm again. It is Friday, March 27th. It's about 75 degrees out here. Soil temp, I just checked that, 4 inches down is 67 degrees, which is awesome and amazing. It means that I'm going to take a chance and plant corn today. I turned my irrigation on. I did hook up my irrigation yesterday and have irrigation going to this one row of strawberries, and that's because they look pretty puny. We haven't had any rain and it's been quite warm, so they're not looking so hot. But this is my drip irrigation. If you can see it dripping there. And it runs all the way down this row. I'm missing probably about 4 feet down there on the end. But interestingly, strawberries down on the end, and you can see all the more green peeking up down there. Strawberries down there on the end in the more clay soil are doing better than the ones on this end that's more sand. And I assume that's because that end is holding water and this end is not. So have the irrigation hooked up to them. Gonna let them have some irrigation today while I'm out here, but then we have a big storm expected tonight, so I will turn that off. And then it's not on a timer right now because the only thing I'm watering is my strawberries and then the raspberries up top and grapes. But I'm not watering anything else at this time. And if you'll remember, last year I hooked everything up and had everything being irrigated when we planted everything. And I had several things not germinate, rot, and it's just too cold. And I'll explain later kind of why that was a bad idea, why that didn't work. But I'm going to get on with work today. So what I need to do is this row right in front of me here. I'm going to rake this fairly flat and get some soil amendments on there, which I'll show you that when I get to that. And then I'm going to get my onions and carrots and radishes and beets planted in that row. This row, if you'll remember, is my potato row, and I did have some sort of pest, I assume a raccoon, come and dig up several of them. I'd say probably 8 or 10. Dug a hole and left the potatoes out on the ground, so they weren't after the potatoes. The only thing I can think of is, if you'll remember, I put eggshells in this row. So my guess is somehow they were able to smell those, and they came looking for those. But luckily it was just a couple. I put the potatoes back in the holes, covered them back up. My dad ran through all of this yesterday and re-bedded everything up because some grass was starting to grow, some weeds were starting to grow, and right now where there's not much in there, it's really easy to run through and do that periodically. So it's looking great. Haven't seen any potatoes emerge just yet, but I expect, especially if we get some good rain, by the end of next week we should see some popping up there. Next thing I'm going to do is these two next rows. I'm going to plant in Silver King corn. That's a new one for us. We always plant Silver Queen corn, so we're giving Silver King a try. Reason I'm doing it this early is just because I can. It's an experiment. We've never planted corn this early, but the soil is warm enough and I have the seed, have the space. I'm just going to give it a try. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned and we'll see how that goes. What I've read is that corn can handle down to 28 degrees. And by this time of year, our chances of having 28 degrees are really slim. So let's hope it stays that way and we'll get a nice stand of real early corn. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to get on to that. I'm going to get these two raked flat and then I'll be back to show you what I'm going to do to amend this soil for the carrots. Okay, so I've gotten this row raked where I'm going to put my carrots and my onions and things. And then I've got some amendments I want to put on here. So I'm going to add some of this Fox Farm Ocean, what is it called? Ocean something? Ocean Forest potting soil. Mainly just because I have it, so that's the one I'm going to use. I'm also going to use some mushroom compost. And I'm going to mix these together, probably half and half, so 50-50 ratio in my 5-gallon bucket. And then sprinkle that down the row where I plan on planting my seeds. And I'm going to try and keep everything on either side of a central section for my irrigation. I want my irrigation line to run down the middle, and I don't want seeds directly underneath that. So I'm going to try and plant on either side. But when it comes to my dirt here, I'm obviously not going to carry it all the way down this 100-foot row. But what I found, and I can't remember who it was that showed me this, but someone on Facebook or YouTube, not sure which, showed an easy way to open and be able to move these bags, and that is to fold it in half so that the dirt falls to either side, and then cut it down the middle, and you have 2 half bags, which is much easier to manage. So the way that I do it is take it, fold it in half. If you can see, fold it in half there. And I'm going to see if I can do this while trying to film. Alright, let's see. So, take your knife, and obviously be really careful. And you're going to just cut across like so. And then do the same on the underside. But see how it's now separated into 2 more manageable amounts of dirt. So if you're someone who has a bad back or isn't very strong and needs to use things in smaller amounts, this is a good way to be able to lift things without hurting yourself, move things around. Only carry half if you only need half to wherever it is that you're going. But that was a great trick, and I appreciate whoever it was that decided they needed to share that with the world. So I can't take credit for that, but I hope you will find it useful. I'm going to get on mixing these together and starting to sprinkle them on my row, and then we'll come back and show you what we're planting. So here's what I've done for the radishes. I've taken the end of my hoe and made 1, 2 rows that I'm going to put my radish seeds in. I'm going to let my irrigation run down the center. There's a couple weeds here I'm going to pull out. And if you do them when they're young like this, they're much easier to manage. So make sure when you pull this, that you don't just chuck it somewhere else in the garden. I like to chuck it out of the garden because it will more than likely regrow. So, here's my radishes. This is what I'm using this year. And I'm just going to dump them in my hand and sprinkle them out. See if I can do that. Probably not. I'm going to put you down for a second in the dirt. Hope you don't mind. Alright, now I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I just have them in my hand, and I'm just going to gently spread them out. There's no real science to this, in my opinion. If you want to be super precise and get them exactly ½ inch to 1 inch apart, by all means, do so, and then teach us your ways. But I do not have the time nor the patience for that, so I just sprinkle them out. And you can see them down in there. Oh, there's a piece of grass. Get that out. You'll see them, and I'll spread these out a little bit better before I, see, ta-da, spread out nice and even. So I'm going to get these planted. I'm going to get them covered up. We'll be back for carrots. I got my carrot seeds planted the exact same way. I don't know if you'll be able to actually see them or not. Because I sure can't, and I'm the one that planted them. But if you're curious, that's what a carrot seed looks like. Focus on it. That's what they look like. They have little stripes on them. They're super tiny. This is a little less than an ounce because I planted the rest of it. So you don't need much at all to plant a good ways. I planted probably 25 feet, I would say, 25 feet in carrots. And I may plant more depending on how well these come up. It's the first time I've tried growing them out here. But I figured in this sandy soil that they ought to do really well, so I'm going to give them a try. Next thing is going to be beets, and I'll get them in the ground the same way, and then I'll be back to show you how I'm going to do my onions. If you're curious, these are the beets I'm growing this time. And something unique about beet seeds is that they're not actually an individual seed. They're actually a cluster of seeds. So you can see in the package there, they're kind of really strange shaped, look like they have a bunch of different directions they could come out of. And that's because they're a cluster of seeds. So it makes for kind of an interesting growing pattern. Ready to plant my onions here. I've taken that little sharp pointy triangle shaped hoe, which I need to learn the name of because I use all the time, and made 2 furrows going down all the way down to the hoe there that I'm going to stick these onions in. Now I have 2 types here. First of all, let me back up a little bit. So these are onion slips, and these in my hand are actually a little too big in my opinion. These I bought from a local greenhouse. This is more the size you want them to be, and you'll see these have really nice roots on them. So these, I believe these are candy onions, and I believe these are some form of yellow onion. But I soaked these in water for several hours earlier today, and that allowed them to green up a bit because they look pretty sad. But I'm going to get these in the ground, and I'm going to space them, I don't know, probably 2 inches apart, to give them plenty of room to get nice and big. Now you can go through and harvest them whenever you want to. So if you just need green onions for something, you can absolutely go through and do that. But I'm going to try and get some big bulb onions this year, and we will see what happens. So the way you get these slips, you actually can grow these at home if you want, from seed, which one day I will do, but this year was not the year. But you take the seed, germinate the seed, and you'll get something similar to this. You'll probably harvest it more at this stage. And then you'll take those and transplant them out into your garden or raised bed or whatever it is that you're going to use. But I was at the mercy of our local greenhouse, so these are what I have. I'm going to get these in the ground, get them covered up, and then hopefully get to planting some corn. But yet again, we have a bad storm coming, so we'll see what happens. Onions might be the end of today. Alright, so I've got all my onions laid out here. So interesting thing, the larger ones that I showed you, I had 38 of those. And the tiny ones, I had 168 of. Now, when I bought them, I think they all were advertised at bundles of 25. So there would have been 25 of each. And they were the exact same price. So I think something got lost in ordering, or something happened. But I'm grateful to have way more than I expected. So I planted all this down here. Now, the big onions stop somewhere in here. Should have probably labeled that a little bit better, but I'm guessing I'm going to be able to tell. And then all that back row and all the end of this row are all the same onions, and I think those are all candy onions. So what I'm going to do, look at the butterfly. Oh, he's gone. We get these like zebra striped swallowtail butterflies, and they're absolutely gorgeous. But they don't do real well at lighting and letting you take their picture. But anyways, I'm going to get these covered up. Just pull the dirt back to them. You'll notice they're probably about 3 inches in the ground. And as they grow, they will come closer and closer to the surface. just kind of naturally pushing off the ground. So I'm going to get these covered up. Do have, I don't know if you can tell, see that storm on the horizon there? Wind has picked up a bit. So I'm going to get these covered. I don't know if I'm going to get my corn planted or not, but I'm going to try. I'm going to get as much done as I can. All right, y'all. I've got these 2 rows raked flat. You can see where it's wet down in there, so the centers are nice and dark. Got my corn planter here. You know, I've used this last year. Have a really good video on how to use this. I'll try and link it if I can figure it out. So you can see how exactly this works. I have the corn disc inside of it. This is my Silver King corn. And I believe this is a pound. And usually with Silver Queen corn, this will be pink. It's coated with something to keep the rats and the birds from eating it. This obviously doesn't have that coating, so we'll see if that makes a difference, if that matters. Probably won't, but we'll give it a try. So I'm gonna get these 2 planted real quick. Like I said, storm's on the horizon, some of it's here. So I'm gonna try and get these in the ground real fast so I don't get stormed on. Sorry about the jet going over. But I appreciate you coming along. Sorry I have to cut this one kind of short today, but we did get radishes in the ground, carrots, beets, onions. Now I'm going to get these 2 rows of corn in the ground, and I am going to double row these, which means I'm going to put 2 lines of corn in here, just like I had 2 lines of everything over there. And I'm going to do that kind of to save space. So to have them do better, but also then I don't have to take up 4 rows because with corn, you really need 4 rows for it to pollinate properly and get a nice, good, full ear of corn. So what I'm going to do is mimic that with 2 and 2 rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to save me a lot of room. Supposedly in the commercial industry, that's what they're doing now and finding much better results. So I'm going to give it a try and we'll see what happens. Take this planter, run it up and down, get these planted real quick. But yeah, it's a beautiful day other than the storm coming in. Sorry about the car. But that's all I plan on getting done this week. We'll see how the weather plays the next week. I imagine next week I'll be planting my tomatoes out here. I bought some tomatoes from a greenhouse and they really need to be in the ground. It's real early for that, but I'm going to try and get them in the ground, and I'll show you what I'm going to use as my trick to try and protect them if I can figure out how to make it work. So stay tuned if you want to know about tomatoes and planting them and early planting and frost protection. I'll see what I can show you next week. But anyways, thanks for coming along. I hope you've gotten something out of this. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Any comments, I'd love to hear them. And hope you're all doing well and had a great week. Thanks for coming along.